As a forensic expert, we saw that the use of software tools for analysis is very useful for us, as you are able to converge on solutions or converge on what has happened on the attacker or the crime very quickly. We saw that in the case study that was given in the last session. What we will do from now on is, we are going to look at some of the network intrusion detection, prevention, and devices such as firewalls, okay, which could be hardware or software. These kind of products, okay, we will try to analyze them, we will try to become hands on in some of the products, we will try to understand how they work, what is the behavior, okay, why these tools are used. All these things we will learn in the next few sessions, and we will also see how these devices, some of these devices or some of these software can be configured by a forensic expert to gather more data. See, one of the things is, one is gathering data and analyzing. Okay. Until now we have been trying to gather some kind of a live data. Now what happens, see, one part of it is, if something bad has happened, you go and investigate what bad has happened and you try to get the data out of it. The other one is to protect the network itself, or even if the network fails, I try to identify whether someone is trying to hack into my network. So in this case, you will be able to use this kind of network intrusion detection and protection tools, and as well as something like firewalls. So first we will look at network intrusion detection, and then we will take a look at what is this intrusion detection, what is intrusion prevention. Then we will take briefly overview of what is the difference between a firewall and IPS and IDS, are both same or are they different. Then we will probably take a look at the software. Okay. We might look at the IP tables for firewalls and probably SNOT for IPS and IDS, and all these were see, you have to become expert in actually programming these devices. Okay. So what these software configuration do is, they will have a configuration file, and in the configuration file you have to write a bunch of rules. Okay. So suppose you see this pattern, you have to take this action, suppose you see this pattern, you have to take this action, and so on. So you have to be familiar in writing this small sort of scripts, okay, to configure these devices. Let us start off with network intrusion detection. What is host intrusion detection? Okay. So the whole aim behind network security is to have intrusion detection, prevention, and analysis. So if something had gone wrong, we have to do some sort of analysis. Now there are two types of intrusion detection systems. One is known as the host based intrusion detection and prevention systems, known as HIDS or HIPS, and then the next one is the network based intrusion detection system or network based intrusion prevention system. Okay. So we will be concentrating mostly on NIDS and NIPS. Okay. The first thing is the intrusion detection, they have a functionality. So the functionality is that it needs to identify, okay, whether any intrusion has happened, or is there any anomaly in the data that is transferring on the network. Okay. That is the first thing. The second one is, what are the modes by which you can detect that there is an anomaly during in the network. Say for example, is someone trying to scan all the ports? If someone is trying to scan all the ports, should I send an alert, and where should I send the alert? Okay. So you would you know that the attackers, before they actually attack a system, they do something known as reconnaissance. Okay. So that means what they do is, they go ahead and try to this is done usually by thieves. I mean, before they want to steal in a house, actually they will look at the surroundings, they will look at who are all the people there, at what time they wake up, at what time they go to sleep, all these things. Okay. So this is very important, and if you are going to use intrusion detection or prevention systems, prevention or protection systems, what you could do is, you could go ahead and then identify this kind of pattern, because if I mean, I hope many of you would have seen old in the old movies. Okay, the villain will always be rotating his eyes and showing that he is a villain. So similarly, you have certain mannerisms that happens with this, that we call it as the pattern. Okay. So we will use, there are many ways by which you can detect this kind of patterns. Okay, whether we are trying to enter into the network. For example, I mean, many a time they will use something known as a honeypot. A honeypot is a system that is left vulnerable okay, and you try, and when an attacker comes in, okay, he will try to see this vulnerable system and then start attacking. So, in that way you will be able to identify, because you are just letting the system be taken by a person and then you are allowing him to steal a house, okay, and then once he steals you catch him. So, this is you could use this sort of a methodology to catch the person also, but at the end of the day, I mean, your prevention is much better. Okay, so, when I use these type of network intrusion detection and prevention system, you could have you could use commercially available systems, or you could use open source. So, we will see some of the commercially available systems as well as the open source systems. The most important part of network intrusion detection is evidence acquisition. So, essentially this will be in terms of a log, and since these devices are made for network security, they are capable of generating logs at different levels. I mean, you could have a coarse grained log, or you could get a fine grained log, etc. So, this has a very good packet logging or flow logging mechanisms, and one of the ways by which, I mean, we can use a system such as Snort to actually do all these activities. So, we will look about Snort later in the session. Okay. Then we will now try to differentiate between firewall, IPS and IDS. I mean, many a times these are confused with each other. So, if it is an IPS, intrusion prevention or intrusion detection system, okay, it is typically designed to operate completely invisibly on a network. So, see, for example, if I know that there is a policeman in my house 24 hours, okay, it will prevent many people from entering my house. So, similarly, if someone tells you that there is an intrusion prevention or a detection system there, I mean, at least some people will resist to attack the system. So, that is the general psychology, or some people will actually be very interested if such a systems are there, because they want to see whether who is intelligent, whether the person attacking is intelligent or the person who put the system is intelligent. So, whatever may be the case, and if the policeman is visible, obviously people will not attack, I mean, hopefully, but if the policeman is invisible, okay, then it gives an advantage for the policeman. Similarly, intrusion prevention or intrusion detection system, if it is invisible to the external world, okay. So, for example, you could actually block ARP packets, or so that if someone pings this IP address, you do not get a response, okay. Something like that can be done, and in order to put a mask like that, one could use firewall, okay. So, for example, I do not have to send any data out of IPS or IDS to an external world. So, someone tries to do a HTTP 80 on my IPS or IDS, I should not actually get back a response to the person, okay. So, I would only be sitting on the network observing the data. So, in this way, when I want to apply a filter, I might use a firewall, okay. The second thing is, see, one of the ways I can do is that, suppose someone tries to attack, okay, since it is also a intrusion prevention system, okay. For example, if someone starts to do port scanning, then I can configure a rule saying that any data from that IP address which is doing port scanning should be blocked, and I can send this instruction to firewall and tell the firewall that please block any of this, or I myself might have the capability to block this. Now, this is where there is a confusion, because there is, see, IPS at sometimes acts as a firewall, and sometimes firewalls have to prevent IPS from getting exposed. So, it is a kind of relationship, slight relationship that exists between. So, sometimes the IPS and IDS may have the ability to implement firewall rules, okay, or the other thing is they can instruct the firewall to stop the packet. So, something like this can be done. In a prevention technology, in IPS actually, IPS, if someone is extra active, okay, for example, port scanning activity is someone extra active, or is someone trying to send a lot of packets to your machine, okay, in order to suppress your processing ability, like DOS attack, okay. So, a prevention system will study this, and then it can pass information about bad logins or inappropriate content that is coming through the network, or many other network and application layer functions. For example, movie downloads, for example, okay. If you tell an organization that do not download movies, yes, people may not really listen to you. The second one is, you could go ahead and install this or prevent movies from getting downloaded in each one of the employees PC, but that is going to be too difficult for you, because if as the number of employees grow, then you have to install more and more application, and remember, more the application, more the vulnerabilities and more the security problems. Okay. So, one way is that you could make the IPS or the IPS system block downloading of movies. So, a firewall can also do this, okay. But once you do this, okay, you need not set it up for all the employees in the organization, you could actually just put it in one place. So, maintenance and other things becomes much more easy. Coming to application firewalls, okay. So, you use proxies to perform firewall access control for network and application layer traffic, okay. And some of the ability to do IPS functions, I think we saw that before, okay. A sort of preventing access for a particular website or preventing people from downloading movies, either you could do with an IPS or you can do it with a firewall. So, there is actually a sort of overlap, there are some common functions between these two, and there are functions where these two are independent, okay. And one of the things with application firewalls is, you could actually look whether the RFCs have been implemented properly, okay. So, with application firewall, for example, HTTP, suppose I send a request, then you should send a response, and if their response has an error, whether it sends a correct error code and not the correct error code, at least it sends an error and things like that, these can be checked, okay. And one of the things with firewalls is that it might provide a real time analysis and blocking of traffic. So and major difference is that, okay, firewall is visible to the external world, okay. So, one of the things the firewall can do is it can also reassemble the packets, okay. So, it has much more capabilities than a intrusion prevention and a detection system, okay. So, what is the functionality of a IDS? We will now take a look at IDS, then we will later go to firewalls, okay. IDS are rule based, okay. So, you detect a certain pattern, and then in order to prevent or detect an attack, you have to use certain rules. For example, do you want to block some packets, okay? Do you want to redirect some packets, okay? All these things can be specified by rules, okay? The rules will usually be dictated by the organizational policy, okay? So, if the organizational policy says that, okay, if any employee downloads a movie, block it, but download the movie to the administrator so that he can watch the movie. You can put you can even do that, okay. So, any employee wanting to download a movie, the administrator can watch the movie, okay, or he can sell that movie. So, something like this, such kind of things can be done, but hopefully your organization does not have such kind of policies, okay. So, second one is it also, so the policy could also be like issue an alert that this employee is spending more time on Gmail rather than working with the company's email. So, such type of alerts can be configured. You could also configure or look at suspicious packets. We had already seen an example of port scanning as one of the example. Now, other thing that the IDS or IPS can do is sniffing, and it can do sniffing and multi-layer inspection, like it can inspect for IP traffic, or it can inspect for TCP traffic, etc., and based on IP or TCP traffic it can take some action. One of the simplest thing I could do is I need not respond for any ping. Okay. Suppose I do a broadcast ping, if you remember the previous the case study, okay, we were looking at firewall logs, and one of the firewall logs, if you would observe that they were trying to do a broadcast from 192.168.1 dot address, okay, the broadcast was 255, and the firewall actually detected that kind of a broadcast, okay. So, broadcast actually weighs the bandwidth, if someone is interested what are the machines that are available in the local net, he will do a ping minus B and then do a broadcast and then identify who are all the machines, okay. So, those activities the firewall was trying to stop, and it was logging it, okay. So, in this way once you sniff the packets, you will be able to have protocol awareness, you can look at protocol reassembly and things like that. Okay, but most important thing is this prevention systems and detection systems must be more or less real time, okay. So, because the detection systems has to identify before an attacker takes over control, okay. Similarly, a prevention system has to prevent before the attacker takes over control, okay, which means it needs very high amount of processing power, okay. The difficulty is that, okay, see, in order to do such kind of processing power, you might have to go for deep packet analysis. Deep packet analysis means that you analyze the whole packet, okay, along with the flow, not just the headers or the metadata, which we were talking about in the past few classes. Now, deep packet analysis will provide you lot of information, but at the same time it is extremely difficult, because it has to, especially if you are running at line rate, that is the speed of deep packet inspection should be equivalent to speed of the data packets that is sent. It is virtually impossible unless you have some mechanisms to do this. Okay. Usually what these kind of IDS and IPS do is that they have some sort of a normalization mechanism. Okay. For example, only taking specific metadata or dropping some packets which are really not useful, etc. So, they will try to do this kind of an analysis. So, this is functionality of IDS or IPS, and the most important thing is it needs good performance. The next point is, how does IDS or IPS detect that something has gone wrong? Okay. The very easy way of detection is signature based analysis. Okay. So, one of the things, the detection can be done either in the active mode or the passive mode. I think active mode is being live, passive mode is being watchful and reading from some other logs and things like that. Okay. But once I do the detection, I mean I can do, the way I can detect is from these, after collecting the data, is one is signature based analysis. Okay. So, if some organizations, for example, have a criteria that you are not supposed to send any Word document outside, okay, even to your private email ID, because the document might have confidentiality requirements, etc. Okay. So, in that case, what this IDS or IPS will do is that it will always monitor, I mean you could do it even with firewalls, but it will start monitoring the packets whether that particular signature is available. I mean if you remember, we were looking at signatures for the Word document. Okay. If that is the case, it actually logs this, okay, that this is, and it actually tracks the header signature and the trail signature, and then within that it takes the document and then puts it, and then logs which person had sent. In fact, in one of the organization I was working, this person had actually wanted to review a document, and so he sent it to his private email ID, and the organization found it out and they actually terminated him. So, some of this can be taken up very seriously. Okay. The second one is you can do some sort of protocol analysis. I think we discussed that. I mean you follow the RFC and then see whether the messages are exchanged according to the RFCs. And the third one is, as I told you, the behavioral analysis, which someone is trying to look into all the ports. I mean a person has no business to find out whether all the ports are occupied or not. Okay. So, unless he is a network administrator or is a system architect who tries to do something. So, this kind of behavioral analysis can also be done with this IDS or IPS. We will look at some, before we close this session, we will look at some types of IDS. You have commercial IPS systems like Checkpoint, okay. You have Cisco's IPS, okay. You have called Entrus's IPS and then Tipping Point IPS. These are some commercial vendor IPS that you can see in the market, okay. And there are different types of IDS, okay. So, in open source you have IDS, okay. IDS can also, when I say IDS, IPS, IDS can also be used for IPS activities, okay, most of the IPS activities, and vice versa. Okay. So, and so the open source we have Snort, okay, and Snort can detect varied attacks like buffer overflow, stealth port scans, and then CGI attacks, okay, SMB probes and OS fingerprinting attempts, etc. Whether someone is trying to see whether you are using what type of OS are you trying to use. Okay. So, when you try to do this kind of fingerprinting, then Snort can actually help you out. There is a product called Security Onion. Okay. It combines many tools together. So, this is actually much more effective because it also includes Snort. Okay. So, it comprises a lot of IDS tools. Okay. So, you could look at this Security Onion, or you can use openvips.ng. This is essentially for wireless intrusion detection. So, we had seen in the previous sessions that wireless systems are slightly different from wired systems. So, you really have a different intrusion detection technology for wireless systems. We would say that you go to this website that is given below and try to see what are all the other types of IDS and especially open source IDS that are available. The idea is to have detection and prevention. So, we are not recommending that okay, use only Snort or use only Security Onion, and you should feel comfortable with the tool. okay, that you use. So, the best thing is to try out some of these tools and see your comfort level, then you look at the features that this tool provides which others do not provide. Since it is open source, if this tool lacks certain features and you can write your own programs and include it, well and good, that will raise your capability of doing forensic analysis and prevention and detection. We will look at the other features of IDS in the next session. Thank you very much.